Okay, welcome back friends. We are into 31st module of AI, where we are going to talk about something called scripts. You have seen in the last module that whenever we encounter some statements, they do not only refer to that single case, but they represent complete scenario. For example, when I say that I went to watch a match, I not only talk about viewing a match, but I talk about many other things like whenever I, for example, that happens in normal communication as well. When I tell you that I went to watch a match, you assume lot of things. You assume that I purchased the ticket, I went into the stadium, I am seated on my seat, I view the match and looked at the toss, then the first inning and the second inning. Hopefully I am talking about ODI. So, I looked at both innings. I am happy if my team has won, I am not happy if my team has lost, and so on and so forth. And once it is completed, I go out of the stadium and all that is assumed. That is called goal driven or expectancy driven reasoning. That happens. Or the other example is that I have also listed in the handout is that we went to Osho's eatery when we went to Madhvi, and we enjoyed our dinner there. Now, if you encounter this statement, you also expect a lot of additional things. For example, one thing, the earlier part of the statement clearly indicates that Madhvi is not my hometown, I am visiting that place. But then a lot of other things are happening when we say we dine there, that we went into that, we have looked at the menu, we have ordered something, we ate those things, and there are waiters who delivers those things to us, serve those things to us, and we paid the bills obviously and then left. So, the complete scenario is assumed once I state that. How to do that in a computer program, okay, is very important, and that is what is done by in scripts. And Shank and the other researchers extended that idea of CD into scripts to represent such statements, which does not only represent a single information, single conceptualization, but sequence of conceptualization, which includes many more things actually. Okay. One example here is given the handout is that when we go out to dine, we expect it to be a restaurant obviously, and there are events like reading menu and ordering and eating and paying the bills and so on and so forth happening. There are people involved like waiters and cashiers and others who serve, hotel managers, the person who take orders and so on and so forth. There are other there are other objects, menu and rate card or menu and tablecloth and plates and glasses and so on and so forth. So, point is all these things are assumed to be part of it, and script is something which represents this expectancy driven scenario. Okay. So, when I say that I want to dine, I went to dine yesterday, the whole bunch of information is provided. So, when it is represented in CD, all other statements are added, all these objects which are implicitly mentioned are added, okay, waiters and menu and everything is added. Okay. For example, if I found a statement that I went to Jungle Book yesterday and we enjoyed our dinner. So, the Jungle Book is a restaurant. So, once I do that, the same that the script will not only let that representation of that statement into the structure, but will enter everything that we were hungry, that is called the precondition. Now, why you want to go to dine? Because you are hungry. So, that precondition is added. It also adds that we went inside Jungle Book, we were seated, we ordered and all that, everything is added. Okay. So, when we encounter such statements, a series of statements are represented and inserted, and that is called invoking a restaurant script. Now, there are some challenges in this, okay, and what are the challenges we will be looking at, but the point is when we encounter an indication of such scenario, will not only enter the information contained in that statement, but contain or assumption that the complete scenario has taken place, will insert everything else. Okay. The idea is when you say that I had 500 rupees, I went to Jungle Book and had my dinner. Now, you can easily conclude that I must have much lesser than 500 rupees by now. Why? Because one of the requirements of dining in a restaurant that you will have to pay your bills, and that is there. In fact, it is part of the script. So, that can be easily assumed. Okay. That also assume one more thing, that I was hungry. Okay. So, these things can be inferred, though it is not directly mentioned in the script, that those things can be inferred, and that is the power of script. We have seen that is a limitation of CD, when the representation is confined to the very statement. Now, script actually help us improve that. And there is one more example which I gave in the handout, that I went to Indora Park, which is a natural zoo in Gandhinagar, with kids. You assume that a lot of other things, like I bought tickets, I took my car inside and I parked my car in the parking zone. I took all picnic related material from my car, went inside, enjoyed watching animals, and had my breakfast or whatever there, moved around, come back, took the car and go back. Now, everything is assumed. You can see that in a single statement. I am talking about multiple things together, the complete scenario. Now, when you talk about scripts, scripts are these scenarios. Okay. And when you invoke that script, the complete information available in that script is inserted into the representation. Okay. There is one script which is a very simple script which I have provided in the handout of watching a match. Okay. You can see that script, it contains few things. One is called entry condition. Entry condition for watching a match obviously is that you have interest of viewing a match and you have money, both things here are mentioned. Okay. There are a lot of other prerequisites, that the match, you must be at the same place where match is happening and so on and so forth, which I am not talked about. So, that is what I am talking about, a very simplified representation of watching a match. Okay. So, those are precondition or entry conditions. There is something called props, which are the objects involved in this. Here it is tickets and seat and match and so on and so forth. Roles, the people who are involved, like person who wants to watch the match, or booking clerk and security person who show you in, and ticket checker who is there. Okay. And then there are some scenes. The scenes are, you can see that quite interestingly, P trans P to the stadium. Now, this is a mixture of CD representation as well as the normal language. Now, this is good for pedagogy purpose, but in true sense this will be a complete CD representation. You can see that first scene is going to a stadium, the second scene is buying a ticket, the third one is going inside stadium and sitting on a seat, taking your seat, then watching a match and then exiting. All these things are there, and then you also have exit conditions or results. Okay. So, you can see that when script is invoked, all of these are assumed, and in this particular simple script I have talked about scenes which are normal, expected or default sequences of events which are likely to happen when this script is invoked. Please understand this word, likely to invoke, this might not happen. In fact, a complex script will have alternate scenes. If a scene after one scene, if this happen or this can happen, we will soon see some examples of that. So, there are alternate paths also, and there are alternate execution of these sequences of these scenes also, and so on and so forth. But the scripts are basically like this. This is a very simple example, but it is still a very good example for you to understand different stakeholders of this thing. Okay. And we have already seen that that how the script can be invoked. For example, when you find a statement called Jai went to watch a match. Now, you can see that the script contains somebody called P. Now, we do not know who this P is basically a placeholder. So, when we encounter a statement Jai went to watch a cricket match, P is replaced by Jai. Okay. So, like that, when you encounter a statement where you can replace that placeholder, it is done that way. Okay. And you can see that there is some similarity with frames. In frames also you have attributes and their values, and there are some default values which are assumed and so on and so forth. but then there is a difference. Frame is a very simple structure, the script is comparatively more complex. There are parallel scenes, there are alternate scenes. It is quite possible in script some scenes are not executed at all. Unlike that, frames are quite similar. For example, two student frames are almost everything same except the values of the attribute, but here the difference is much larger and much bigger. And as I said, this information, the scenes, the information that we provide here, it's basically all default. Okay. And when you talk about scripts, when they are invoked, those default things are overridden by the information that is provided in the script. For example, if you encounter a statement like Jai asked for Italian pizza with double cheese, he waited for 15 minutes, got angry and went away. Now, you can find that this information provided in this statement as something which is different than the script itself. If the script writer has actually provided typical scenes which can indicate why one can get angry. Okay. For example, here he has to wait for 15 minutes and that angers him. So, that kind of an alternate path is, if provided in the script, one can even reason with that and can clearly conclude that dining does not happen, and obviously payment also does not happen. So, you can see that it is possible for somebody to conclude something like that because it is provided here. Okay. So, there are default values. Okay. Default value is that when you go to a restaurant, you dine, you pay your bills and you are happy, you not no more hungry, but in this case it does not follow that path. Okay. It deviates from that script, and that is why many things described in the default format of the script does not happen. So, when you learn something to the contrary of whatever is mentioned in the script, they no longer be there in the script which is activated. Okay. So, there are some parts of the script we have already seen. The first one is entry conditions. So, when you talk about entry conditions, they are conditions that must be satisfied for invocation of that state. For example, I go to a restaurant, obviously I have to have two entry conditions. I have to be hungry and I have to have money. Okay. And when I went to watch a match, obviously I am interested in viewing a match and I have that money, kind of. Okay. Or when I travel by bus and so on and so forth, I have to be there at the bus stand, kind of. Okay. Now, these are examples of entry conditions. And interestingly, most of the cases entry conditions are not satisfied in specified in the statement, but when they are not specified in the statement, they are assumed, like in the case of the earlier statements that we have encountered. Results are also so. When you say that Jai went to watch a match and he was ecstatic, probably you can get that his favorite team has won, because that the result shows. Result has two outputs, happy and not happy. Happy when your favorite team has won and not happy when your favorite team has lost. It is, and in exceptional circumstances the result may not be true. Okay. So, when you find statement talking about something abnormal which is not mentioned in the script, probably the results are not there. For example, when you encounter raining and match abandoned kind of a thing, then obviously viewing does not happen, or happy or sad, obviously you are sad because you can't watch. So, you can understand that thing. Okay. So, default thing do change when the sequence is not observed, when the statement indicates that the normal default sequence is not observed, it disturbed somewhere. Props are the objects involved in the script, and this again has default information. Here we can say that a ticket is a prop, seat is a prop, and so on and so forth. And this change, for example, if you go out to have watch a cricket match and you buy a pavilion ticket, you probably will have an additional food coupon. So, that is an additional prop that you will have and not others. So, that also is possible. So, props also change, default set of props obviously are there, but additionally you may have them additional ones. Roles are people who are involved in the script, and this is a general assumption and that might change. Okay. We are not talking about, because here in the simplest representation we have not talked about fellow spectators, we have not talked about umpires, we have not talked about assuming a cricket match, we have not talked about the ball boys and all that. If this match is a football match, you probably have other roles like the linemen and the referees and so on and so forth. So, point is the roles, even viewing a match, roles would change. Okay. So, when you default is obviously a few, but whenever you encounter other information, you may add others. Okay. And if you have a serious detailed script, which the example that I gave is not a one, it is a very simple one, just used for pedagogic purpose. For a serious case, you have a lot of other information. For example, it involves events like tossing and lunch and tea and all that in a cricket match, and also about the sequence, how in which order this happens. The toss happens in the beginning, and then only then the match starts, and then you have innings, and there is a lunch break, and there is a tea break, and so on and so forth. And also the detail this thing description of script probably will have scoreboards and many other things, screens and so on and so forth. Interestingly, whenever you write script, for example, viewing a cricket match or viewing a match, viewing a cricket match also, you can see that there, in fact, once you enter into it, there are 3 different types of possibilities. It is a 2020 match or an ODI or a test match. Based on that, there are some minute differences, though all of them are cricket matches and most of the things remain same, there is some difference. So, the track, when you talk about a track, it talks about a particular type of that script, which is a little different than the normal general script. So, or for example, match, viewing a match, a track is a cricket match. So, you are talking about basically cricket match viewing. Okay. If you have a football match viewing, then there is some difference. Okay. So, that is the point here. The sequence of events following in a default way, obviously they are scenes, and these are the most important things. And why? Because these scenes are directly introduced into the target representation when that statement is encountered. Though they are in true sense to be represented in CD form, in our case we are represented in semi CD form, where you are only using that act and nothing else here. The beauty of representing things into using script is that it can help you learning about sequential and causal relationship, because the agents acts in sequential fashion, okay, like buying tickets and then going inside the stadium and so on and so forth. For example, if you get a statement called Jai went to watch a match and he was very happy, you can conclude that he was happy because the exit condition says that if the team has won, he is happy. So, you can conclude that his favorite team has won. Okay. That causal relationship, because this thing has causal relationship, you can conclude something which was not explicitly mentioned in the statement. Okay. And the events are connected to each other. For example, if we take up a detailed script, which we have not done, and we have talked about very simple script, but assume that there is a detailed cricket match viewing script and we are talking about that script, then example, you say that Jai watched the match and come back home by bus. Now, you talk about 2 different scripts in this particular statement, watching a match and coming back by bus. Now, watching a match, he has to be there in the stadium, and to travel by bus, he has to be there on the bus stand. Now, the exit condition of one particular script and the entry condition of the other script, you will have to join them, and so that you must conclude that Jai has done something to reach from stadium to the bus station. Okay. So, that is again an example of how you can derive meaning out of this thing. It is also possible for you to answer question based on this cause effect relationship, because this is precisely what scripts are talking about. Here is again another example. Jai went to watch an ODI, he was late. When he occupied his seat, asked his fellow spectator, who won the toss? He answered, India has won the toss and invited South Africa to bat. Okay. Now, this is the description provided. Now, if the question is asked, why Jai asked who won the toss? Now, there are 2 possible answers. Now, there is a cause effect relationship. The statement is basically talking about few events, okay, one after Jai being late, he asking a question and is getting the response. These are 3 things happening. Okay. So, it can see that you can see that x results into y, that results into z, and this relationship is going to help us getting the answer. For example, why I asked who won the toss can be answered in two ways. One, you travel further and say that because he wanted to know who has come to bat, okay, who is going to come to bat. Okay. So, it based on that answer that he has got, or if you travel back you can say that because he was late and could not see the toss. Okay. So, both ways it is possible. So, this is an example of how you can use scripts to get answers using this cause effect relationship. But there is one problem. A script is appropriate when script is really fitting in that statement, and not always it is possible for us to judge. And there are some examples provided in the handout. First, Jay went to watch the match, he received the news of said demise of his grandfather and returned back. Now, do you believe that the script watching a match should be invoked? You can see that it should not, because he has gone, but then he heard about the demise of his grandfather and he has come back. So, there is no question of invoking that script. Second, Jay went to a friend's house near cricket stadium. He enjoyed playing cricket with his friend there. Now, everything cricket stadium and playing cricket and all that is there in these two statements, but actually watching a match does not happen here. So, again in this case, though a lot of other things are mentioned, script should not be invoked. Okay. But the third case, for first two, human reader can easily get. Okay. How to get that thing in the program, computer program is a hard job. Okay. But the third one, even human reader cannot get what it is. It is called after the match gets over, Jay went to his friend's house. Now, this is an example of a fleeting script mentioned. Now, you do not really know whether the script is to be invoked or not. There is no way you can judge. When you cannot judge, they are called fleeting scripts, and the programmer's solution to this problem is you just keep a pointer. You do not invoke that script, do not insert those statements like Jay went to the stadium, he bought a ticket and so on and so forth. They are not entered, only a pointer is kept. And looking at the later statement, if it is found that he has really went to watch the match, you can insert those things later and not right now. Okay. So, those fleeting scripts is also an interesting problem. Anyway, but when you find that the script is appropriate, you have immense advantage of using them. All events can be added, all people not explicitly mentioned are possible to be added, all props involved are added, and in the sequence of events, with the default sequence of events are all added. Okay. And it get the values in the slots, the attributes, and it can reason. In fact, it can answer many questions. For example, we have few examples. Okay. And not only that, the entry conditions that I have talked about, the locations, people involved, all the objects involved and the results and all that, they are all mentioned in the explicitly now, which was not mentioned in the original statement. Okay. Those are all implicitly mentioned when we talk in a normal way. Now, they are explicitly mentioned. So, the program itself can reason from it. But you will have to actually, now how that is done? Usually, you look at all this information and see whether this statement contains some of these script headers. They are called script headers, the props, the roles, the actions, and if you find that mentioned in the script, in the statement, the script is invoked. Now, this is not always a great thing to do, but then most cases you do not have other option. Okay. So, sometimes a normal rule of thumb, Schenck used in his paper, he referred somewhere in his paper that whenever it encounters at least two heads, headers, he will invoke that script. So, when that he did that, sometimes it is possible that you invoke a script which is not really a script, which should not be invoked. So, an important job here is to see whether we have invoked a script, but is it so that the script is not relevant? If so, then those things are to be revoked back. So, that is one important thing that happens here. But then when you use this script, the appropriate script, you can reason like nothing before. For example, an example is given in the handout. I am just quoting that example. Manoj had a chocolate. Rajan wanted it. Manoj refused. Rajan told Manoj if it did not give him chocolate, he will not let him play with his friends. Manoj gave him the chocolate. Now, this is a small story that is presented to the problem solver using this thing script. A question asked, why Manoj gave Rajan a chocolate? The response which is generated from this is because he was threatened by Rajan. Now, how you not threaten? You can see that there is no statement like that, no indication of threat, but it can still do it. In fact, one of the programs Shank wrote was called SAM, okay, which can understand reads like stories like this and can reason from it. Okay. So, script interpretation and resolution of ambiguity, okay, can answer this question just because it was based on the scripts. And again, whenever appropriate script is invoked, it can predict things which are not mentioned. For example, the other example, Jai went to Epicurean, which is basically a name of a restaurant which is there in Ahmedabad, with his colleagues of the office. As it started raining, when he was paying, he called a cab service for returning home. Now, there is an automated cook service, okay, which Jai enters all this information into his system. That the system wants to learn whether it has to cook for Jai or not. And there is no mention, you can see that there is no mention of dining, there is no mention of eating and so on. But you can see that there are two indicators, two headers. One is the name of restaurant and the other is paying. When you are paying, it is assumed that he has followed the normal path. If you are paying, you probably have dined. Okay. So, these two headers are possible to be used here, and the automated cook can actually decide that Jai does not require the dinner now. So, will not prepare that dinner. Okay. So, that can predict. Okay. So, these things are important. Okay. But then a diligent reader would ask a question, how do the system learn that Epicurean is a restaurant? Now, that is a difficult question. And what should it do? One way to solve this problem is to have a database of some sort indicating all restaurants of Ahmedabad. Now, that is a very hard problem, very hard solution, but that is the best solution if you can get. The other one is keep this thing as a question mark and look at the other statement that comes next and figure out what that placeholder is. That is the other option. And the third option is simple, ask the user what is Epicurean. Now, however silly it looks like, that is the way we do it. When somebody tells us something like this and we do not know what Epicurean is, we will ask what is it. Okay. The system can actually use all combinations of all these approaches. It can actually learn on its own, can look at names of names which it cannot understand, ask user, learn about them and place them in the database and so on and so forth. So, that is something that the system has to do when it is working with scripts like this. Okay. Not only that, one very powerful mechanism, one very powerful inference that you can get out of script is that it can predict unusual events, unusual sequence of events and can see that there is something wrong. For example, Jai went to watch the match, the security person asked him to stand in a queue, there was heavy rush on the ticket counter and the queues are very long. Jai stayed in a queue for an hour or so, got bored and returned back home. Now, you can see that there is a deviation which clearly indicates that watching a match does not happen. So, you can't conclude everything. So, this is again an example of the power of script. When it finds something which is unusual, something which is not mentioned in the scene at all, okay, it can understand. And again, if the script writer is good enough, it could get this information, then why one can get bored. When the outcome or the result is getting bored, it can write those things correctly, then it is also possible for somebody to predict why he got bored. For example, in this case, Jai got bored not because security person has shown him or tell him to stand in a queue, but he got bored because he has to wait for a long period and the queues were pretty long. Okay. So, those things can also be inferred from and additionally if you look at that, you can probably infer a few other things, that Jai won't like to stand in long queues, and probably you can also conclude that Jai is not all that great cricket lover like other Indians. Anyway, now you can see that there is a deviation from a normal sequence, which clearly indicates that there is something wrong. So, there is no point invoking that script, there is something wrong. Okay. And it can actually help cause effect determining cause effect relationship as well. And a good designer of script can actually assume all possible cases, those scenes which might probably occur and all that, and keep them there. And once a good designer has designed that script and that is used in representing a statement, you can get immense value out of it. Okay. Scripts were great, but then they were quite isolated. Those scripts, and it is quite possible that two different scripts contain many things in common, and they are not represented exactly the same way, and so on and so forth. This is the same problem like you have in other disciplines, and for which you require standardization and all that. There are a lot of other attempts made after that. One was again done by Schenck and all that. It is called memory organized pockets. Now, that is something where you combine multiple things into one. So, it is a single structure which contain actually the essence of multiple scripts. Okay. And the reusability idea is also built in. So, if some script contains something which is possible to be reused, the mop can do that, and it can combine sequences for better and non-isolated kind of reasoning. And there are two different types of memory used by mops. One is called the ontological memory, which remember this was a problem with the CD as well as script. So, there was no ontology. So, here there is an additional memory provided, ontological memory, and obviously it has the other memory called episodic memory, which is almost the same as scripts. So, both things are used, and you can see that the Epicurean problem that I talked about. Now, if you have a right ontology which clearly indicates that Epicurean is type of a restaurant, reasoning can be pretty easy. Okay. There are a lot of other properties which makes MOP a far better solution than scripts. It can learn from his experience. Okay. So, that is scripts were quite static. Here the MOPs are a little more dynamic. They learn from their own experience. It is very similar to us, like when we went to restaurant for the first time, probably we had little idea. When you go to restaurant after 10-15 experience, you probably expect everything, waiters and all that very clearly. The same thing happens here as well. And one great thing about MOP is that because it stores everything together, it can relate to different things. And one example of a program called Swell is very interesting. There are two stories provided. In fact, one was about death of a very successful horse, race horse, without any apparent disease, and a spouse killing the other one because of insurance money. The program actually indicated that there is possibly the similar reason here. So, that is what this MOP does, and there is something called PALM, which is based on planning. Here an example is Abdul decided to earn more money, he called Rajan. Now, it is quite possible that Abdul is a person who is looking for a job and Rajan is a placement consultant, or he is a smuggler and Rajan is a smuggler and Abdul is good at motorboats, and so on and so forth. So, there are many things. How the right reason from the statement can only be derived if you learn about Abdul's plans and his goals and all that. So, there is the other solution here is PAM, and there are few other attempts which are mentioned in the knowledge representation. There are two, description logic and the web ontology language. These are used today. With that, we will conclude this particular module. We have seen how scripts are used in representing statements which represent complete scenarios and not a single statement here. We have seen problems with scripts, we have seen fleeting scripts, we have seen how appropriate scripts can improve your reasoning. We have also seen some latest improvements in this representation. With that, I conclude. Thank you.